Thank you so much, and good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you're connecting from. I want to welcome you to this second meeting of Voices in Action of the IDB Academy, a special creativity edition this time. We are at the IDB headquarters in Washington, D.C., and of course, we are also streaming for the entire region. This time, we welcome José María Lasalle. Fortunate to have him with us. He lives in Madrid. He always has one foot in Barcelona. He's an academic professor. He's a consultant and director of the Technological Humanism of ISADE, and also a columnist and analyst in several media. But he's a writer as well. He's the author of several books, Cyber Leviathan, which I really recommend, The Wounded Liberalism, and his recent book in combination with Enrique Krause as to the presence of Espinosa in Latin America. This time, José María, we're going to talk about a fascinating subject, which we think or thought was science fiction in the past, but it's coming closer and closer. It's creativity and artificial intelligence. And we have a bunch of questions. Can artificial intelligence be creative? Can machines be authors, for example? And what seemed so far away years ago is having more and more influence, which go beyond the juridical, ethical, and regulatory issues. We're going to talk about this with you. What is quite interesting is that when we speak of artificial intelligence and creativity, when we analyze and review what was said in social networks, seldom are they related to artificial intelligence and creativity. It's more with labor markets or climate change or ethical issues. So we are really quite interested in hearing from you, since you've had that dual belonging in culture and the digital world. What are the implications of this? I love the last or the topic of Jorge Drex's last book, or record, I should say, which says, who want me to believe what I want to, what I believe I want? And he himself asks himself, is this someone telling him, or is it the artificial intelligence? Who's telling him this? Is it himself? So we want to talk to you about this topic today, which seems so far away, almost impossible. And today, it's getting closer and closer. What are the implications of this? Thinking that creativity is probably one of the last strongholds of mankind, and probably we felt would not be touched by machines. So I leave these questions in the air for you, just to tell the public that in this conversation that we're going to have today, we're going to have a lot of terms that we've heard of in the newspaper or in different conversations, like the metaverse, the neural rights, and all these things. It seems we understand them, but it's not the case. So, José María, it's been said that clarity is the philosopher's courtesy. So please think that not all of us actually know what these terms really mean. So welcome. We're happy to have you here at the IDB, and we're happy to have you with us today. Thank you so much, Trinidad, for your words, and thanks to the IDB for this invitation to be here today with all of you. Whoever are here in the room and who's ever connected on Zoom and on the streaming everywhere in Latin America. The question you asked me is the one which is on the panel. Can artificial intelligence displace creativity? And the answer is yes. It can do it. And if we're not capable of reordering or clearly defining the role that we really want to assign to mankind and the machine and the relationship that we have to establish in the next few years, we will see that the machine, in other words, the artificial intelligence, will displace creativity and thus displace man definitely. And that is the work we have ahead of us. We must be capable ethically and regulatorily be able to avoid. And I say avoid in the sense of giving the machine a given role and giving man a different role. and allow them both to work together, complementing each other, enriching creativity even further, because the idea here is that human creativity must continue to grow and be what it's been this far. The artifact of many of man's capacity, creating beauty, creating progress, cultural change that has carried civilization forward. So, can artificial intelligence displace creativity? My answer is yes. Yes, if capitalism, as it's conceived as an economic system now, as it's evolved in recent years, is one which is cognitive, in other words, based on information, on knowledge, managing the society of information and is based on internet, that capitalism is advancing in all transformation capacities of the economic and social realities, making machines evolve and allowing them to displace man, setting them aside in tertiary or secondary positions, and at some point may end up even excluding man. I'm going to get up because I want to try to explain this, because otherwise I'm not capable of developing my thoughts often. The world knows what the Industrial Revolution was. It was something that took place in Europe at the end of the 18th century, and it developed throughout the 19th century. It was a revolution based on the machines. Machines capable, it was the steam and the famous mechanical mesh. In the 19th century in England, there was a revolt from the workers who managed the machines, who were called Luddites, who wanted to destroy the machines, not because they were going to be substituted by the machines, but because basically it was dehumanizing them. It was taking the spirituality of work from them. It was taking from them the activity that they did together with the machines. That reality is what is somehow repeated in the digital revolution, one which is so powerful, is changing the world so much that it's facing us, making us face challenges similar to those man lived during the Industrial Revolution. Let's realize that the Industrial Revolution created extraordinary economic prosperity, changing the world, but it also generated a tremendous inequality. An inequality that took us in the most developed societies, and I'm talking, for example, of the European countries, 100 years to correct. It was only after 1945, after the Second World War, that we were able to establish a pact of justice as a result of the work and the capital and the relationships, the capital and work, making it possible for man to live within a democracy of well-being, which was able to make this well-being be part of the humanization of work. And that's the reality that is changing with the digital revolution, and it's changing it because the work that's being developed by man in contact with technology is dehumanizing us. It's dehumanizing us at all levels, not only at the most basic levels of work, but also at the more professional levels. And that's where work begins to take place with the artificial intelligence, the intelligence that uses data and uses, as Trinidad said a minute ago, quoting Drexler, algorithms. What are these algorithms? Algorithms are mathematical formulas developed by engineers who work with the data and thus, let's say, substitute man's capacity to think. And they do it much faster than man and much more efficiently, because they're capable of generating information based on data masses which are much greater than man is able to manage through his brain and through his life with his own intelligence. That's why we talk about artificial intelligence, because it's the artificial intelligence of machines that tries to imitate man's intelligence. This far, artificial intelligence, let me see if I'm capable of passing this page with one hand and three things here. I'll see if I can. Yes, I was able to do it. Don't worry, Trinidad. I was able to pick up this page. As you see, I am reivindicating the analogical aspect here, because I think that in these days it's very important to displace ourselves from our relationship with the machine and emancipate ourselves from the machine. And nothing better than resorting to, we don't have a blackboard and chalk, but we have paper and a labeler. And above all, we are in the position to think of things in direct relationship with the paper. I was saying that the artificial intelligence is trying to imitate human intelligence, and it is doing it, and in many cases overcoming, going beyond it. But there is one field that is not within its reach at this time, which is the one dealing with creativity. This far, artificial intelligence is working with data that are basic information about economics, logistics, human interaction. All of this are data that come from the digital footprint that we left working with the internet. And they're creating a volume of massive information and can only be managed by artificial intelligence. But that artificial intelligence, which at this time is working with the information, is one which seeks to go beyond. It seeks to substitute human intelligence. And it must enter into the field of creativity. Creativity, which, as we know, is based on the unconscious activity of man in his brain as part of his personality. Hence, the data that can be obtained through Instagram when we do the like or we upload a photograph, thus projecting our sensitivity, and how we find ourselves in life and we upload a picture that projects our well-being. We're giving the artificial intelligence the information of something as basic as the ideal of happiness we have. And if we do the like and we generate the ability to match the information between the data you contribute when you see my happiness and the data someone else feels when they observe the happiness of the person who uploaded the picture, we're helping artificial intelligence progress and be capable of imitating human creativity. And that leap is the metaverse. The metaverse means the ability for us to unfold ourselves in another being operating on a platform and leaving behind a footprint of our unconscious, which is even stronger than it could be to simply upload pictures on Instagram or maintain a WhatsApp with a person we love and with whom we exchange words or voices, expressing what we are. That's the work that's beginning to be developed by artificial intelligence, something which makes what we've defined before as cognitive capitalism arising from the relationship with machines and becoming a capitalism which seeks to substitute man in his ability to create as well, create beauty, or think of life from the point of view of happiness, or do those things that man can do when they create. And that's the struggle we must be capable of controlling through regulation and public policies. Because a machine and the economy that we're developing based on the machine is not only generating an inequality similar to the one we lived during the Industrial Revolution, and which, as I said before, took us 100 years to correct. Now, the new model of capitalism that's developing in contact with artificial intelligence And note, it's an artificial intelligence that's beginning to displace attorneys in developing their cases and judges when they must make decisions, and officers who are deciding on a dossier, or engineers when they're doing their mathematical estimates, to identify the resistance of the material to build a building or a highway, or even an architect when he has to make his estimates to define what structures are required. And it's beginning to operate also in drafting an article for the press. There are artificial intelligence that are already writing articles and even novels, adding all Cervantes literature, all Melville's literature, and they're capable of writing a novel that imitates Melville and Cervantes at the same time. Or they've been capable of composing the 10th symphony of Beethoven, the unfinished symphony, and other similar experiences where the machine is getting close to, with the risk of substituting us. Isaac Asimov, the father of science fiction, in a novel called I, Robot, said, from now on, the only thing that is sure and inevitable are the machines. That unavoidability of machines, which is the artificial intelligence, is what we're exposing ourselves to today. If we as human beings are not capable of claiming back that collective right, hence allowing creativity to be our space, the space in which man has developed this far in its most profound and most personal personality, where the human dignity is based on the ability to create, to imagine, to dream, to anticipate worlds, to develop utopias, to be capable of thinking with one's imagination and feel how we want to create our well-being. And that we cannot attribute to the machine. The machine must help us work our imagination, yes, but not replace us in that legacy, exclusive legacy, which is our imagination. And that's what we're doing in our developments, as I was saying a minute, in the large technological corporations. They're beginning to create their investigation and their innovation and their work in a vascular way, developing, as we see, for example, with the metaverse, which means an experience of investment in real time at 360 degrees. In other words, substituting the reality we're living in right now with a parallel reality where through an avatar, I begin to interact and live with other beings in spaces like this, in a conversation, but one where suddenly the machine begins to record everything I'm doing. The relationship between my way of thinking and the board and the pen in my hand, trying to convince you that your attention cannot be lost when I'm talking, that I can interact with the people who are next to me and be capable of watching them, seeing them, and making them follow my conversation. And it records that. And that becomes a data which are ours, our most profound data of our identity. But when added together, the artificial intelligence begins to learn to manage it, continue to evolve, and reach an objective, maybe by 2050, which will be the general artificial intelligence. That's how we're calling it, the strong or general artificial intelligence, which is completely autonomous, aside from man, separate from man. It will be different from man's intelligence because it will not be completely human, but it will be compared to ours or even greater than ours, not only in its estimate capacity as this far, but in creativity as well. And that's the risk we have. And that's the risk that some are considering, trying to develop artificial intelligence models, developing enormous enterprise designs where the man disappears. and there are only machines, or administration disappears and there are only machines, and only a few human beings who may hopefully not be substituted, those who are the ones that decide above the structure. And that's where we're facing a real challenge as human beings, identifying what must our role be to make artificial intelligence and the technological development to continue, of course, because it's helped in progressing in civilization with the scientific creativity developments and things, but subjected to man's space, which must be ours alone, at least if we don't want the machine to end up by substituting us. I don't know, Trinidad, if I've been within the 20 minutes you gave me. Can I go a little more? Yes, you can go a little more. I'll continue then. I was saying that the development of the economic model, which was produced in 2007 as a result of the digital revolution, and it appears with the appearance of the smartphone. Suddenly, with the smartphone, we're putting a computer in our pocket, and with our little fingers, we're capable of handling it in real time and in contact with others, generating data, which feeds this new economic model. That digital revolution occurs in 2007, as I said, with the appearance of the smartphone, the first digital device, and with the appearance of the Google algorithm, which indexes all the information we generate when in contact with the smartphone, which is a little computer that we work with. It indexes the Google algorithm, allowing to discriminate all the information that is in the networks. And if I put a word, whatever word, it immediately allows me to identify how the information is ordered. Well, starting in 2007, a model is developed, an economic model, as I said, which is called now the information or cognitive capitalism, which is based on companies that are organized as platforms, like Amazon, Google, Netflix. These are all platforms managing data through algorithms. And that information today is used as the basis of the cognitive capitalism's economy and is now in the hands of basic structures of artificial intelligence, trying to develop not only information, but knowledge. A knowledge that manages artificial intelligence. And with that knowledge, men are being displaced. I was saying, an attorney's office, the judge's office, the architecture's office, in the advertising agencies. What's going to be the future of humans' capacity to manage all that information, the creativity related to wisdom? We must be capable of restoring the models of wisdom that we've lost. That means a cultural reordering of how to place a human being with cultural and creative capacities capable of making the knowledge that manages the machine not lose sight of the human capacity capable of visually following and controlling everything the machines do down below. That knowledge, the wisdom, is something which requires a cultural effort by mankind that not only responds to the pattern of the economic Western culture, it is open to technodiversity and pluralism and visions or approaches that must reconsider how we should organize all this knowledge that the machines are giving us. And that's where creativity, only in the hands of human beings, exclusively, places a challenge in their hands for their professional survival, their almost vital survival, so that in some way we are capable to face the challenges we have ahead of us in the 21st century. I've gone a little further. We've clarified or maybe confused. That's wonderful. And I'd like to invite the public to send us their questions via the chat, and even the public that's in the room. José María, if you want to sit, we're going to let you rest for a little bit. I think fascinating what you've just told us. And the truth is that yesterday, in fact, when sending the invitation to this event, someone we had brought once before contacted me again, Micaela Manteña, who is about to publish a book on artificial intelligence and creativity called Artificial. She's an abogamer, as we called her. And in her publication, she was telling us that the artificial intelligence, in any case, is not infallible, nor neutral, nor completely autonomous. And that's where all these challenges, these ethical challenges come up. I think what you told us is incredible about the artificial intelligence capable of composing the 10th symphony of Beethoven. That tells us what the machine is capable of doing. So I would really like to go into this in greater detail with the idea that you ended on, and that is that we as human beings must play a role that is almost indispensable to be on top of all this, making this artificial intelligence not be neutral. But there's also something that I was thinking about the region, and those are the enormous differences, the enormous gaps. There's an inequality almost the same as the one we saw with the Industrial Revolution, which would be caused by this digital revolution and the artificial intelligence. Well, yes, but first, the artificial intelligence, or the model that we're building, is an economic model based on data, And the old models were also based on data and information, but now when using the internet and all the digital sphere actually represents, the data are being recorded in real time and are available. And man, with his intelligence, with his creativity and capacity of managing, cannot deal with all that. We'll need to use the machines and the artificial intelligence. There is a unit called the zettabyte, which measures the most important estimate unit based on data, which during the pandemic, mankind generated 67 zettabytes. It's an enormous amount of data, and we were locked up in this. But in 2025, it's expected that, according to projections, the economic projections, that there will be 180 zettabytes in 5 years.
We will be tripling the amount of data being generated. So only through AI can we manage that amount of information that we humans will generate. Now, that information requires an even more evolved AI. And how do we get that? By capturing humans' capability to respond to what does not have an answer. That is to say, capability humans have to innovate before the unknown. And that is what creativity is about also. And that is what large technological corporations are doing. They are fighting globally over technological hegemony, which are the United States and China, which have turned technology into their war weapon. That's what they're trying to do as quickly as possible. And that is why they need to capture the information that human creativity generates. And that's why AI is doing this qualitative quantum. So it is possible to capture human creativity more and more through metaverse or Instagram, or even through the WhatsApp messages and pictures that we send that reflect more and more who we are when we interact with others. So all of that information is enabling AI to grow. So what challenges do we have ahead? Well, the challenge is that we need to be able to regulate AI because the work that is linked to that is discriminatory. That is, it does not foster equality. It has never done that. Google's indexer is not equal. It has been thought about for middle to upper European, white, Anglo-Saxon sector of the population. So there is a discriminatory bias that's leaving out certain ethnic communities, women, and also it is discriminated against certain professions. That is to say, the calculations that engineers introduce give preference to those who need AI services that better match their status, and everybody else lags behind. So those discriminatory biases are there, that inequality grows, the prosperity is in the hands of those who design AI or own it. That is to say, we were talking earlier about data. Who owns data hosted in a machine? Well, the owner of the machine, and the most valuable data very soon will be machine data. They will be even more valuable than human data. Okay, so in view of all of this, I would like to know if there's any questions from our audience, the audience both here in person or virtual. I don't know if we have any microphones here that can be passed around. Hello. Yes, we do have a question. First of all, José María, everybody appreciates this conversation, and Leticia Ortega is asking, say, José María, I would like to know your opinion about two questions. One, why do you believe that human beings have a tendency to create a situation that ends up turning us invisible and displaces us? And two, why are we doing so much to ignore what has been labeled as subjective, quote unquote? Oh my gosh. Okay, so this is absolutely philosophical. It's much more complicated than I expected. Let me see. Well, this takes us to reflect on the basis of our Western culture, who put individuals at the base of knowledge. We believe that the most valid knowledge is the one that comes from individual creativity. I believe that in order to manage the world's complexity, the only proper way of managing it so that we are equal, solidary, and consistent with each individual's individuality is collaborative. So far, machines cannot collaborate. I mean, they can collaborate to a certain extent, but humans are much more collaborative, especially when we're dealing with managing information in the amounts that we're seeing nowadays, and that is all over the world. So biases or subjectivity is something that we need to think about because it is closely linked to human creativity. But in order to talk about, to face the challenges that we have, we need to have more collaborative in design, and we need to start on working on collaboration. I don't know if I'm answering your question, but basically, this is kind of like the way in which my response goes without being too philosophical, but I believe this kind of serves the purpose for now. Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, we have a question from through LinkedIn, and it says, don't you believe that AI development could eliminate certain professions in the future? That's why we have this concept of substitution. Currently, over 300 professionals acknowledged by the ILO out of a total of 700 to 800 will disappear because of AI. And we don't know the degree of substitution that those jobs will be replaced by others, but we're talking about over 300, getting close to 400. We knew that robotics displaced the more manual type of labor, but the more advanced AI is substituting more professions. One of the problems of the liberal democracies is substitutions in the middle class, and we have seen monopolies in certain professions. This type of expertise is becoming replaced by artificial intelligence. In President Obama's farewell speech back in 2016, he said that the political future of the United States was based on the challenge that middle class will have in order not to disappear because of artificial intelligence. And that was the most significant challenge the US democracy was facing. It is not by chance that populism in developed economies such as the United States or all over Europe, or like Spain, my country, is focusing on the middle class. Populism is not a lower class social exclusion. Fascism is growing within the middle class. Why? Because they are being displaced from their traditional status that they could manage to occupy in specific areas such as an attorney or an engineer or a high public official, specific areas that they had access to because of their expertise. But nowadays, that's being taken over by AI. Okay, here we have a question from our audience. Pedro, good morning, José María. If I may, I have two questions. One has to do with this latest question you had on the professions that may disappear and be substituted by artificial intelligence. And my question is whether you think that in this turning point that we're seeing with AI, maybe the professions that are closely linked to humanity, such as philosophy, should gain more momentum in this world that tends to be so technified, so that we can think where we want to get to with AI. That's my first question. And now my second question is whether you believe that like higher or overall AI, the one from 2050, whether you believe that it will be aware of the fact that it exists and whether that could cause or pose a risk to mankind. Because if it's aware of the fact that it exists, they know that there is another entity, which will be us, which could be their rivals. Or if you can just unplug it and that's it. Okay, in terms of your first question, Pedro, very quickly, the key to safeguard a human's presence and to supplement what machines can do and to make machines supplement what humans do and vice versa requires human beings to keep creativity to themselves, especially the elements that enable creativity, such as philosophy or humanities. That is to say, everything that's a critical enabler and that makes us manage the relationship that we have in a relationship with machines from our analytic critical capability. So far, machines do not have that capability so far. So humans have to go above and beyond machines with critical empowerment and to judge the impact that decisions that the machine makes can have. It's what's being called robust AI, which is reliable in the sense that the ethical biases that must be introduced in order not to talk about utilitarian efficiency, what underpins the decisions and biases that are discriminatory, because if only efficiency and utility matter, if that's not there, it will be progressively phased out, which is what's happening at the time. So the decisive element that preserves humans and prevents machines to be autonomous is that critical empowerment which philosophy has on decisions. One of the great European philosophers, Hannah Arendt's friend and Heidegger's disciple, talked about the principle of responsibility as a principle in which, however much power they develop, a more ethical responsibility to manage that power. And that is the responsibility that as humans have. So let us increase our technical capabilities, of course, knowing that this is not going to be neutral, but it's not going to be neutral because of biases, but also because it unleashes humans' capabilities to go above their own limits and to be bold and go beyond the limits. And what we need is to identify in AI limits, and that's what we cannot lose sight of. The logic of utility and efficiency overlooks limits. So we need to permanently set limits, set boundaries. And the second question, overall AI or general AI will create intelligence that's comparable to human intelligence, and it will be completely autonomous, and it will not be neural-based. It will be silicon-based. It will not be oxygen-based, the oxygen that feeds our brain. It will be of a different kind. We don't know when that click will occur, and just like we don't know what happens in our brains when Homo habilis became thinking homos, what happens and what caused that neural change to make humans aware of themselves. Machines with general AI will be aware of themselves, but we don't know what type of awareness it will have. Now, the key is that humans will also have to be responsible to be above AI. So far, the other party has always been a human. What will happen with the other party is a machine. We're going to have to acknowledge dignity, because human autonomy is based on the recognition of dignity and the fight for dignity based on autonomy and emancipation. Therefore, we're going to have to face the great ethical challenge of attributing moral autonomy to the machine in the relationship they have with us. And that is why we work on creativity and to keep that within our own domain. Because again, we're going to have to set ethical boundaries for the future of the machine-governed society, which will happen, by the way. This is like science fiction around the corner, but we have a new question here from the audience, so go ahead. You can go ahead and introduce yourself. Hi, José María, thank you. This is a very passionate conversation and discussion, and I am Alejandro Gamboa, a IDB consultant. And it's a little bit of a concern as a human to see what's coming. I consider myself an optimist by definition, and what gave me peace of mind in the anxiety that could come about with this conversation is collaborative intelligence and that capability that we humans have to collaborate. So what kind of messages have you crafted, or what have we learned to stimulate that? I'm an optimist, like I said, and I faced frustration during the pandemic, but I always kept a positive outlook on things. We saw a huge potential for collaboration. We saw the impact it had on the environment and everything else that was so nice during the pandemic, but then we humans reverted back to we were used to doing. So how can we break away from that so we can move on to that collaborative intelligence, which is, from what I'm hearing, what could help us take that step forward? Well, I believe that actions will again lead us to collaborate. This is a critical universal collaboration moment. Everything that is happening is a consequence of a globalization that's going into crisis. And since we lack a governance model that in a balanced way enables us to resolve the tensions that are being released by the different crises that globalization creates, two of them being the ecological crisis that's becoming a crisis emergency, and the other one, the digital crisis, because we will need to have digital sustainability, since humans will see how, when in developing technology, they are being taken apart. We talk about universal basic rent or income as a way to break away with social peace, because displacing more and more people that don't have a chance really to relocate because of the economic design that makes humans be displaced by machines will make people be outcast. So this puts two models facing each other, either the competitive one, which is the one we're seeing now, that has incorporated geopolitical crisis in addition to all the other crises that I previously described, and that is the logic of competition, which can, to an extreme, can lead to a third world war if it's not already happening through technology. But collaboration is the only possible alternative to competition. In a scale model for competition, the outcome will be ecological collapse and digital collapse. We will see this in 2025 when the reserves for rare earth metals are depleted, and therefore the materials that make it possible to create a cell phone are in short supply. Therefore, the logic for competition to capture those rare earth minerals will take us to a more competitive crisis, especially between the US and China, with China controlling 75% of the global market of rare earth metals versus 1% by the US. So it's either that or collaboration. So we either learn to collaborate and learn to develop collaborative mechanisms, or the reality will be impossible to live with. In addition to that, in order to find responses, we need time. We are at a juncture where the great economic and social value is time. Whoever has time to think has a competitive advantage over others. And in order to gain time and manage time, you need to collaborate with others that will help you manage your time. Because if you start competing, the competition escalation forces you to exacerbate conflict. Therefore, there will be no way out than fostering collaborative intelligent mechanisms. And that is why Spinoza is the philosopher on collaboration. He reflects on intelligence collaboration, which doesn't take away the individuality, but forces them to collaborate with others in a new, tolerant, and plural diversity. Because we need multiple approaches, we need to gain time in order to manage the level of complexity that is coming about. Okay, we're getting to the end of our session, and we still have questions from our audience. I believe that we'll have time to answer one, maybe two. Okay, we have a question from Ricardo Gomez from Colombia. José María, what type of policies must be developed to manage human wisdom and to control artificial intelligence? Regulatory policies, public policies that preserve general interest. We cannot leave it up to the digital market in the most literal sense of the word. It cannot be corporations or big corporations, rather the ones which through ethical regulation mechanism will take care of an issue that we should all be able to resolve with equality, because what's key is for solutions to the problems we are describing to be equal. We cannot create a sort of Noah's Ark to save a few from the collective collapse. So we cannot have an AI that governs the world that way. So we need public regulatory policies that identify the general interest, and that has to be done with democratic designs that are based not on conflict, but rather on collaboration. Another question from Facebook. Mark Carrillo would like to know. He says, not all human beings have the same capability of reaching that machine control. So will we see a new era of inequality in mankind? Wisdom is collective because we are faced with a model that is so complex, where the level of information and knowledge that machines will manage is so very huge that no individual human being should feel excluded from the response that we must all give to the control over the developments that the machine will bring about with information, with knowledge, etc. That is to say, all of our human talent will have to somehow converge to create overlapping dynamics that will make all human knowledge necessary and all human creativity necessary. Therefore, the logic of inequality in what we're talking about in terms of public designs can never be a bias that sets apart some from others. For the first time, we're talking about a collective right. This is not an individual right. Individual rights are happening in the area of privacy with the protection that we want to give to our data to protect them from the use that the big platforms want to have. And we're talking about individual privacy rights. But in this context, when we're talking about avoiding humans from being displaced, we need to talk about collective rights. To protect ourselves from the climate crisis, we need to protect everyone. You cannot, escape global warming by going into a bunker that you build. Even though you have an indoor pool, you will never be able to go outside. Maybe there will be some sort of corporation thinking that by building some sort of underground bunker, they'll be able to survive. But that is not a solution. What is a solution is to be capable of safeguarding the collective rights of all mankind, that to not have global warming exterminate us. And the same happens with the exponential development of AI technology. We need to preserve certain areas of knowledge. For example, there was an article from Neural In that talked about they're working on brain implants to create a brain cyborg under the logic of fighting certain diseases. That's what they're working on. And so there's certain bioethic control that prevent them to have this commercially development beyond the medical use itself. But we're talking about developing, which is what I was talking about yesterday, developing this. Humans should be able to have the right to include these implants so that humans can continue to develop their own capabilities. They're talking about themselves, not just regular citizens. And this is something that we should be able to prevent. José María, I don't know if we have time for one more. We only have 3 minutes left. So maybe very quickly to a very quick answer to a difficult question. Alejandra Luzardo asks, in spite of these technological advances, neither creativity, neither artificial intelligence have been able to resolve simple and monumental issues that are a higher priority and that we continue to have in our region. What do you believe is needed to resolve this? We need collaboration. I'm sorry I'm being so repetitive in my answers, but we need to collaborate. Collaborate by acknowledging that humans beings are increasingly exposed to fragility and vulnerability. There's no one that is not vulnerable. Vulnerability makes us weak, and it shows us the most essential human dignity. And so protecting that dignity will require to develop public policies that are increasingly collaborative. José María, thank you so much. I believe that you left us with a lot of questions, a lot of food for thought. So first of all, I would like to thank you for your presentation, which has been truly fascinating, and also to all of you who came here or who joined our session. And I would like to remind you that next Friday, December 9th, we'll have another session from IDB Academy, Voices in Action, with a specific edition on creativity with Maria Jose Machado, who is an Ecuadorian artist and curator, who will come to us and talk from the Cultural Center in Washington, D.C. I believe that today, more so than ever, creators are being called to be main players in this cultural change. I would also like to invite our audience to download all of the publications that we posted on the chat, because part of this discussion and part of this knowledge is included in all of those, and that's what we want to do with these events. We want to talk about this knowledge for the entire region. So once again, thank you so much, José María, and we will be in touch. Thank you so much, and thank you to everyone. We would like to invite you to scan this QR code and share your opinion. Your opinion matters. We use it to make our sessions better and better, and to truly address the interest our audience has. Thank you so much.